This is Dan of Vagabond Buddha. I'm going to show you videos and pictures of Mexico as I discuss the retire early with rural self-reliance in Mexico places. But don't write anything down as you listen. Everything I say is in writing at Vagabond Buddha with Google Map links to each location I discuss. Just click the link in the notes below this YouTube video to get details, pictures, and videos about every location in Mexico that I discuss. Retire early in rural self-reliance, top locations in Mexico. In my previous two posts, I listed the top places to live or retire in Mexico for cultural explorers and for active adventurers. This post is my retire early in rural self-reliance, top locations in Mexico. The location preference archetypes are cultural explorers, active adventure, and rural self-reliance. Rural self-reliance, these are people that may want some distance between themselves and their nearest neighbors. They may also want to grow their own foods and live off the grid if possible. They might be even interested or curious about survival systems and self-protection during social change. In some cases, they're interested in associating with smaller, less traditionally defined communities. And they might be interested in the other archetypes, cultural explorers or active adventurers, but their dominant interest is in finding a location to retire where there can be rural self-reliance, which is their dominant interest. Okay, the post then in this case is ordered for people interested in rural areas where they can become self-reliant. In general, rural self-reliance implies that you are not in the middle of a town. You have a little land around you, so you can grow most, if not all, of the food you eat, or you just have the land and are ready to grow the food in case things become difficult socially. If you're not growing food in advance, you probably have some food stored so you can eat until your first crop comes in or is harvested. The land should be fertile, and you should have a river nearby or a spring or well on the property, so you don't run out of water to grow fruits and vegetables. You probably also want to be in a low density population area where will not be so easy for less prepared people to show up and disturb your peace. Some reliable rain and sun will also be helpful for rural self-reliance. You probably also want to have a relatively smaller town nearby where you can get supplies when necessary. Okay, so in thinking up where these places would be in Mexico, you're looking for fertile soil, a reliable water supply on your land, predictable sun, fair-priced land, and near a small town for supplies. So those are the main characteristics that we'll be looking for the rural self-reliance archetype. Okay, top places to live or retire cheap in Mexico with that as your criteria. These top five, Chapala or Ajijic, Mexico. Chapala, Ajijic would be the small town you would visit for your supplies. You would need to select a plot of land around the lake or the surrounding foothills, but best case scenario would be on the lake or with a serviceable well or with a river that enters the lake. This area of Mexico around this lake is at about 1,500 meters or 5,000 feet above sea level. The temperature in the sun is likely near perfect for growing crops year-round. The further you get from the lake, the cheaper the land is likely to be. This part of Mexico seems ideal for rural self-reliance archetypes. Okay, number two, Tepoztlan. Tepoztlan would be the small town where you would get supplies. Again, there's links here. You can click these and it shows where they are on a map and and a bunch of characteristics of all of these. But Tepoztlan would be the land where you get your supply, or the town where you get the supplies. You would need to select a plot of land outside of town with a serviceable well. You may also be able to get land on a nearby lake or a tributary stream. At 1,700 meters or 5,600 feet, the temperature and sun in this part of Mexico would be ideal for growing foods in out in the rural areas. In fact, the village of Tepoztlan has a hippie-friendly community with spas and yoga retreats. You could even grow extra organic fruits and vegetables and sell it to the organic-friendly community growing in this area. This area is ideal for rural self-reliance types. Okay, next, Patsicuro, Mexico. Patsicuro would be where you'd get your supplies. It's a small town. You would need to select a plot of land outside of town, as I've said for the other spots, with a serviceable well. You may also be able to find land on the nearby lake or tributary stream. At 2,140 meters or 7,000 feet above sea level, it might be too cool for some crops, and you'll likely have a shorter growing season for that reason. There are also many indigenous people living around the lake that would likely know which crops to grow best in the area. If you pick the right crops, this area would likely prove ideal for the rural self-reliance archetype. Next up, number 4, San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, would be the town that you would where you could buy your supplies. It's a little larger than the first 3 I've mentioned. It's approaching around 100,000 in the area. So you may need to get a little further outside of town to get that rural feeling. But at 1,900 meters or 6,200 feet above sea level in this part of Mexico, it'd likely prove, in terms of sun and soil, to be a good spot to grow your food. Make sure to get a place with a serviceable and reliable water supply. Okay, Oaxaca, Mexico in the south. A bit like San Miguel, you would need to go further outside of town before you would consider this rule because of the size of Oaxaca. It's even larger than San Miguel. The elevation, soil, and sun are perfect in this area if you could find a nice piece of land with a reliable water supply. If you're enjoying this or finding this information useful, could you please like it, share on social media, comment below, or subscribe? Your interaction will rank us higher in search engines, which will help us remain successful. Thank you in advance. Okay, the top 10, or I've already covered the first 5. Now we're going to cover 6 through 10. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I didn't research this area, but on the ocean at Puerto Vallarta is probably not ideal because the land costs can be high. And also you'd be subject to, be more people on the coast. So I would check the land behind the coastal mountain range. That land is most of the land along the coastal range of the Pacific has a nice soil behind the coastal range. That's probably the case here too. You'd have to research that further. So that's number 6. Guanajuato, Mexico. The soil is too rocky in town, so you would need to do further research on surrounding areas before pursuing this further for both soil and the water availability. San Cristobal, Mexico, and coming in at 7. The city is smaller, so it has a rural feel just a few miles outside of town, but it has fairly cool weather patterns with less dependable sun, so the crops you grow might be limited. Cuernavaca, Mexico. Between here and Tepoztlan, number 2 at the top mentioned, you may find a perfect cheap piece of land that you could get for cheap. You'll have to do that research yourself. My apologies. It would require further research. Okay, Querétaro, Mexico. This soil looks amazing, but the city is too large. You have to head out of town, maybe towards San Miguel to the west, and see if there's a more rural feel and water availability and proper soil. The rest of these, the next 10, I don't really have much information about because I wasn't researching these areas for rural self-reliance. The first 10 are pretty good guesses. Mainly the top 5 I would focus on. But just give you an idea, Guadalajara, Morelia, Puebla, and Mexico City, all 4 of those, the population of those cities is too large. And for most rural self-reliant types to even consider. So they're probably not a good choice. And then for Tulum, Merida, Playa del Carmen, and Isla Mujeres, those are just too hot and too much rain for many types of crops, because that's in the Yucatan. And that would also apply to Campeche. And then Tasco, which is another, it's the final number 20. It's just the soil there seemed too rocky to me. It's very concrete sort of countryside, very steep and concrete, so it's not going to be a good guess. You probably can find stuff outside of town, possibly, but it's very rocky and mountainous there. Okay, so this completes our list of top places to retire in Mexico for rural self-reliance types. There's links. Just click the link below this YouTube video to find links to our top 10 places in Mexico for cultural explorer archetypes, if you're more of a colonial old town person, or if you're a active adventurer. There's also a top 10 places in Mexico for active adventurers here. And then there's the best travel or retired cheap places in paradise locations in the world, which is not just considering Mexico. So those are 3 links you can find in addition to links to all of the places I mentioned. If you'd like to learn how to make money online or how to live internationally, possibly with less money than you spend in your home country, please grab a free copy of my ebook, which is available on our webpage. Just click the link below this YouTube video. And finally, this is Dan of Vagabond Buddha. Thank you for stopping by. The world is your home. What time will you be home for dinner?